Let's go ahead. I missed them all.
Okay, that's fine, yeah. So welcome everyone here in person and over Zoom. This is the August 8th Town of Lewisboro Town Board meeting. Exits here are at the front of the building and the rear of the building. If you will, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll start with public comment number 1. Rich is on, okay, good. Anybody here with a comment?
You can go, sure.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, members of the board. My name is David Cooper. I live at 945 Route 35 in Cross River. I'm here tonight to express what I call this frustration with the town having left the building department understaffed and without the resources necessary to process permit applications efficiently and effectively. On June 1st of this year, my wife and I paid the town $7,000 in building permit fees. That was 10 weeks ago. And I've called the building department regularly. They've been very professional and very responsive to me. This is not a knock on the building department. I get what they're going through. It appears to me that they are understaffed, don't have enough people to review the plans, not even using a third-party consultant to review the plans. And it also appears to me that this condition has lasted for a significant amount of time. So I'm here tonight to ask this board to please place on its agenda or move up on its agenda to the extent that it's not already looking at this problem, this issue. You've got to be able to hire somebody to work in the building department or at least hire a third-party consultant plan review. I was looking through the agenda today. I think this was serendipitous, but I see that you have a monthly report from the building department as to revenue that they receive. And there's something like $23,000 that you've received just this month alone in building permit fees. So that data says to me a couple of things. One, there are a lot of other constituents like myself who are patiently waiting for a building permit and not, knocking down the doors, but have paid a lot of money in order to get it processed. And 2, that the town has the money to do it. Because I can just assume if that's just 1 month, every month you're probably getting very similar revenue in. And under New York state law, you can't use it as a revenue generator. You got to use it for what the bill is for the fee has been paid for. So there's got to be enough money to either hire somebody ASAP or a third-party plan review.
Right.
So I've just asked that the town board please put this on its agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you could send me an email with the details of your project.
Will do.
Great. Yeah. Anybody else?
Linda Faber, Cross River. On behalf of the Garibaldi Society, I want to say that we are finalizing the plans for our privately funded celebration of Italian heritage. As a resident, I would like to address the recent personal attack upon me by Councilman Welsh on social media. Our proposal for holding an Italian Heritage Day on Columbus Day, which is a national and state holiday, also called Indigenous Peoples Day, was brought to this board in good faith and received positive statements from you and many Italian Americans in Lewisboro. Calling me the proposer of the event and not using my name did not change the malicious nature of his attack, claiming the ability to read my mind and say that I was trolling Pride Day and Juneteenth, 2 events I have no problem with. Is it now the policy of the board that when members of the public come forward with a proposal for discussion on the agenda, individual board members can attack them? This kind of intolerance can have a chilling effect on free speech. I ask the board to investigate whether this is an ethics violation under your code and take appropriate steps. I would also like to take the opportunity to remind Dan that Columbus Day began as a celebration of Italian heritage created in response to mass lynchings of Italian immigrants in Louisiana at the turn of the century. In my family, my grandmother suffered great trauma when her husband was gunned down in Mamaroneck while taking part in a demonstration for fair wages for Italian immigrant workers. Dan, I don't know what personal guilt you suffer from because of your Northern Italian background, but how dare you diminish the racist treatment of Italian and other Mediterranean peasants who were abused in their countries, forced to leave their families, seeking opportunities in the factories and sweatshops of America. It is hard to believe you graduated from John Jay to spew so much anti-American venom with your social media posts. I can only imagine that was part of your re-education in China. In closing, is there a cutoff date for when we can celebrate the perseverance and success of our ancestors or commemorate the wrongs by one ethnic group to another? Who decides? You, Dan? Thank you.
Anybody else here? Public comment? On Zoom?
Simone, I'm inviting you to unmute.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. I've also had time to think about the prejudicial vote of no against Italian Americans at the last meeting. Councilmember Shaw, you first tried to abstain. I'm still not understanding why. Presumably because you knew what a vote of no was actually saying. I'm thinking, and Town Supervisor Gonsalves, you would have voted yes if the Garibaldi group accepted other ethnic groups into their celebration of Italian heritage. However, I don't remember you asking that of the Juneteenth or Pride organizers. And as a small side note, instead of those organizers supporting Italian Americans, who, by the way, supported them, they chose to speak out against Italian Americans and went further to talk about their group's issues well after their events successfully took place, none of which was relevant to another group asking for help in celebrating their heritage. It was quite embarrassing. Then, if the vote no wasn't enough, Comrade Welsh took to Facebook to proudly announce he would have voted no as well, and then decided to state his personal opinion that Italians are apparently not currently suffering to his satisfaction. Astounding. Councilmember Rendo warned you. Without a policy in place, you are putting the town board in a bad position. And shortly thereafter, here we are. Why wouldn't Italian Americans feel slighted? This board represents all of us. I'm personally embarrassed and angry by this vote and the message it sends to Italian Americans here and everywhere. This hardworking group of people were not welcome to our country with open arms, were treated horribly, and without any handouts, without the benefit of speaking the language, they rose on their own with only each other to depend on, and not only became successful in such a short time, but contributed to our country in so many ways. And all these years later, we're back to square one. How is it so acceptable to openly show your prejudice towards an entire group of people? I don't care what background people are. We need to band together and scream from the mountaintops. Today it's Italians, tomorrow it's your group. And if you stay quiet because perhaps you're not Italian, there will be no one to help you when your group's attacked. You have no choice but to reassess your decision and give that $1,000, as all the criteria was met and there was no, and still is no, policy in place. My final question. What happened to hate has no home here? Thank you.
Thank you, Simone. I'm asking Carol Cernak to unmute.
Hi, Carol Cernak, South Salem, New York. I agree with what Glenn and Simone have had to say. I would also like to ask the town board, where is the transparency in what's going on with what goes on the agenda? As far as I understand, there's a lot of things sitting on Tony's desk that haven't been pushed through specifically two things is the timber pile at the Salt Dome, especially in light of the fire at Westwood in the past couple weeks, or the mulch pile. Since they were your model entity for how the town was going to move forward with the operation at the Salt Dome, where do we stand with that? I keep asking, nothing ever gets resolved. And the other thing is, where's the list of the properties that are for sale in the town of Lewisboro? Where's the transparency? Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And that's it.
That's it? Okay. All right, moving on to communications. We have 4 resolutions for scouts, and I have them right here. These are scouts who have achieved the rank of Eagle, so they should be very proud of achieving that goal. And so rather than I read all 4, I'll start with Andrea. You can read one.
Whereas Spencer, help me out, how do we pronounce the last name? Nitre, that's how I was gonna say it, of Lewisboro, New York, is a member of Boy Scout Troop 101 in Vista, and whereas Spencer Nitre, by his conduct, responsibility, principles, and achievements in following the trail of scouting, has acquired the resourcefulness and leadership ability that will stand him in good stead in his future life, and whereas Spencer Nitre, by virtue of his scouting experience and unselfish service to home and community, has earned the highest honor of the Boy Scouts of America, the rank of Eagle Scout. And whereas Spencer Nitre, for his Eagle Scout project, built over 250 feet of bog bridges through a half of a mile of wetlands to connect a residential neighborhood in the Lake Kitchewan area to the Leon Levy Preserve, a local nature preserve. And whereas Spencer Nitre completed his project by utilizing over 250 man-hours of labor, the efforts of which included transporting the necessary labor to the sites while adapting to changing environmental conditions and managing the project as an active leader. And whereas residents now have a connecting trail into the preserve, which greatly reduces the need to drive and park at the entrance of the preserve. And whereas this honor is deserving of public notice, now therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Lewisboro, in recognition of the worthy achievement of this citizen of the town of Lewisboro, does hereby offer the congratulations of its populace to Eagle Scout Spencer Nitre, and be it further resolved that this resolution be spread upon the minutes of this August 8th, 2002 town board meeting for future generations to see, and that copies of this resolution be presented to Eagle Scout Spencer Nitre and his parents. Dated today, August 8th, 2022.
So Dan, you're next.
Whereas William Fuller of Lewisboro, New York, is a member of Boy Scout Troop 101 in Vista, and whereas William Fuller, by his conduct, responsibility, principles, and achievements in following the trail of scouting, has acquired the resourcefulness and leadership ability that will stand him in good stead in his future life, and whereas William Fuller, by virtue of his scouting experience and unselfish service to home and community, has earned the highest honor of Boy Scouts of America, the rank of Eagle Scout, and whereas William Fuller based his Eagle Scout project on addressing the needs of the ROAR Ridgefield Operation Animal Shelter in Ridgefield, Connecticut, by replacing the former narrow bridge utilized by volunteers to access the dog walking trail and replacing it with a newer, safer, and wider bridge. And whereas William Fuller also repaired a bulletin board in town where residents can post news they wish to disseminate. And whereas William Fuller also replaced an outdoor container which holds food donated for residents in need with a bear box made out of steel to ensure wildlife would be prevented from entering the container. And whereas this honor is deserving of public notice, now therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Lewisboro, in recognition of the worthy achievement of this citizen of the town of Lewisboro, does hereby offer the congratulations of his populace to Eagle Scout William Fuller. And be it further resolved that this resolution shall be spread upon the minutes of this August 8th, 2022 Town Board meeting for future generations to see, and that copies of this resolution be presented to Eagle Scout William Fuller and his parents.
Excuse me, whereas Joseph Smith of Lewisboro, New York is a member of Boy Scout Troop 101 in Vista, and whereas Joseph Smith, by his conduct, responsibility, principles, and achievements in following the trail of scouting, has acquired the resourcefulness and leadership ability that will stand him in good stead in his future life. And whereas Joseph Smith, by virtue of his scouting experience and unselfish service to home and community, has earned the highest honor of the Boy Scouts of America, the rank of Eagle Scout. And whereas Joseph Smith based his Eagle Scout project on creating a meditation space in the South Salem Cemetery, which can be quietly utilized by visitors, the numbers of which have increased dramatically in recent years. And whereas Joseph Smith concentrated his efforts not only on enhancing the appearance of the cemetery, but also added to the sense of respect for the loved ones buried there and added a space for those grieving a loss. Whereas Joseph Smith also cleared an overgrown portion of the older section of the South Salem Cemetery, which holds historical importance to this area and of which may no longer have relatives tending to the graves. And whereas this honor is deserving of public notice, now therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Lewisboro, in recognition of this worthy achievement of this citizen of the town of Lewisboro, does hereby offer the congratulations of its populace to the Eagle Scout Joseph Smith. And be it further resolved that this resolution be spread upon the minutes of this August 8th, 2022 town board meeting for future generations to see, and that copies of this resolution be presented to Eagle Scout Joseph Smith and his parents.
Okay, and this one is for Ty Gregor. Whereas Ty Gregor of Lewisboro, New York is a member of Boy Scout Troop 101, Vista. And whereas Ty Gregor, by his conduct, responsibility, principles, and achievements in following the trail of scouting, has acquired the resourcefulness and leadership ability that will stand him in good stead in his future life. And whereas Ty Gregor, by virtue of his scouting experience and unselfish service to home and community, has earned the highest honor of the Boy Scouts of America, the rank of Eagle Scout. And whereas Ty Gregor based his Eagle Scout project on assisting Ward Pound Ridge Reservation Trailside Nature Museum by creating a maple sugaring storybook hiking trail in an effort to attract families of younger children to the park and museum. And whereas Ty Gregor cleared a 1/8 mile trail through a large area of sugar maple trees called the Sugar Bush on Pell Hill, highlighting where the sugar maples are marked and tapped during maple sugaring season, and strategically placed the start of the trail at the playground, whereby the children can observe the trail as it is lined with branches and logs and covered with wood chips. And whereas Ty Gregor also installed 12 cedar post story panels styled like pages from a storybook, which tell the story of maple sugaring, and also constructed a kiosk that encourages families and children to hike on the trail, which is outfitted with maple leaf shaped trail markers. And whereas this honor is deserving of public notice, now therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Lewisboro, in recognition of the worthy achievement of the citizen of the town of Lewisboro, does hereby offer the congratulations of its populace, Eagle Scout Ty Gregor. And be it further resolved that this resolution be spread upon the minutes of this August 8, 2022 town board meeting for future generations to see, and that copies of this resolution be presented to Eagle Scout Ty Gregor and his parents. Congratulations, Ty. Up and we'll present you your proclamations. So, yeah, you go first.
Okay. Congratulations. I've known these guys since kindergarten. Congratulations. Out of the way.
Mr. Fuller. Congratulations. Nice to be done.
And Mr. Gregor. Watch that cable.
Yep.
Congratulations. Great job. There you go. Oh, you want the boxes?
Joel?
Joel, is your,
I'll receive it after.
your son's on here, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you all. I know I have two sons who are Eagle Scouts, and I know the amount of work that goes into that, and also, I'm sorry, you said you, yeah. Go ahead. So there's a lot of work that goes into these projects, and I'm sure, you know, and of course the parents, you know, they do their part in supporting. So congratulations again.
Not just the projects, Tony, but a 12-year commitment to get to this point, which is exemplary.
That's correct. Thank you. That's Rich Sklarin, our town board member, who's remote.
The voice. No, guys, those projects were amazing and really thinking outside the box, each and every one of that. So thank you.
Well, the diversity as well. It's thinking about the needs of the community and meeting them in ways that the community probably didn't even think about. So it's generous, tenacious, and hopefully you'll carry it forward with all good deeds.
So thank you. I'm going to stay for the meeting, but you don't have to. So if you want to, yeah.
I don't think they need any more badges.
No demerits if you leave early.
Okay. You're welcome. Okay, next we have the consent agenda. So motion to approve the minutes of July 8th and July 18th, as well as the monthly reports for the building department and police department. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
New business. We'll start with Homeland Towers and cell tower siting presentation.
Supervisor, I speak over here.
Yeah, and if you want to turn, yeah.
Pick me up.
Yep, that's, yeah, we can turn this so that.
Great.
It should be.
Excuse me, for the record, I am Ray Brigatti with Homeland Towers. I'm the regional manager. Appreciate the opportunity, Supervisor, to present to the board this evening, council members, obviously. I have with me tonight Manny Vicente, who is the owner of Homeland Towers. No stranger, obviously. Manny is a resident of Lewisboro. I'm a resident of Connecticut. As a regional manager for Connecticut and New York for Homeland Towers, it's my responsibility to handle the real estate aspect of it, where I basically look for appropriate locations to site a tower. Homeland simply builds the infrastructure for the carriers, be it the Verizons, the AT&Ts, T-Mobiles, the Dish Networks of the world. I've been doing this business for about 21, 22 years. I remember working in this town about 2003. Since then, you've had two sites built, I believe, one at the town park and the other one here at the LVAC, which Homeland Towers completed, obviously. The need has always remained the same in this general area. What we're talking about is a proposed site in the Route 35 Salt Dome area coming in off of Spring Street. Nothing's changed in the 21, 22 years. The town park site is roughly 1.75 miles away. This is a line of sight technology. It does not reach into this area of 35. It does not reach into the lake community. So there's a need that's here, and it's our job as a developer to find the appropriate location and fill that need for the carriers. We think that the town's property, and we've looked at a few of them, and I'll briefly discuss them, but we think the town's property at the Salt Dome, which is 81 Spring Street, it's a 4.47 acre parcel. It's obviously used for the Salt Dome and other activities that the town has. It's a very appropriate location that we feel for the tower. It strategically puts it at the crux of the curve of Route 35, almost exactly between the town park and the Leon Levy Preserve, where the existing towers exist. This technology is line of sight. There's a science to it. You just can't pick any location. It's very specific on where these towers are located. We've worked with the town before, obviously, at the LVAC location. We are, welcome the opportunity to work again with the town and the town board. I don't recognize a few new faces. Mr. Welch, I think we've seen you over the years. But basically, for the new members and to bring everybody up to speed, this is the property on 81 Spring Street. The brown circle represents the salt dome.
Ray, I actually have this file electronically, so can I share it so the folks on
Sure,
Zoom
absolutely.
can see it?
Absolutely.
So let me do that here. Share, oh, and also share on the. I guess we have.
There he is.
I just need to get rid of the screen. Wait here. Okay.
It's on, Tony. It's good.
Okay. Oops. I got it.
There you go.
Okay. Down a little bit. Okay.
And before I get into the site plan, I should preface by saying, I think the last time we were before the town board was July of 2020. So it's been just over 2 years, obviously. And since that time, there was a company, you folks are probably familiar with it, Cityscape. They're a planner out of the South, and they're a third-party consultant that was hired basically by Westchester County to figure out where the coverage gaps exist, what's currently covered, and where the next sites are going in. They came out with that report. They have identified the salt dome they call the L5 location in the report, and that report backs up, again, not what just Homeland Towers has been saying for the past dozen years, but what the carrier is trying to accomplish in the past 20 years. So with this, I can talk about the site plan. I have my pointer here. This is the 4.47 acre parcel that the town currently has. This is the salt dome. You come in off of Spring Street here. This is Route 35 running west to east. What we are proposing and have proposed really from the get-go is a location in the back right-hand corner of the property. Access is through the existing paved parking lot. We would put in a new driveway right this location here, which would be a gravel driveway. We would propose a 75 by 75 square compound with the tower, this red triangle in the middle of the compound. Utilities and access would all come in from Spring Street. Utilities would be brought in underground. Just some colors to pay attention to. You'll see these red dashed lines that kind of follow my red laser pen. That is the New York State 100-foot DEC buffer zone. We are not in the buffer zone in this location. There's no disturbance that we're causing in the buffer zone. And this is a regulated area because of the wetlands that are to the west on the property here. We've had the site flagged, so we're certainly out of the location of the wetlands. And that's very important for us when we look at sites. We try to pick sites that have the least, not only visual impact to an area, but the least environmental impact to an area as well. The fact that we're not in the wetlands is a good thing. What I'll do is I'll go to second. I have another presentation on the back, if that's all right.
The Lewisboro wetlands buffer is set at 150 feet, right? So, I mean, not to say, and that just means that it becomes under the jurisdiction. It doesn't mean you can't do something there, but just so people know.
Correct. There's different jurisdictions and buffer zones, and that particular location, we had the reservoir over by the LBAC location, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If you want to go to the next slide, it just has more of a zoomed in location. For reference purpose, the salt dome is right up in here. This would be the new access drive coming into the square compound. Again, we would be proposing a pole that is 130-foot tall monopole. We presented to
styles or options to the town for designs. One being a 130-foot standard monopole, which is what we did at LVAC, and the other being a 135-foot monopine tree. And this is the infant discussion of this, obviously. This is not decided tonight, but there's options that we can do, and I'm happy to discuss those options with the board. But basically, this particular site plan is zoomed in. It's a standard compound. We would design it not only for 4 carriers, but there'd be enough space for the town's public safety should the need arise for fire, police, and EMS on the site.
I have a question. I'd just like to know, since you just did to incorporate what other sites have been considered by you. You mentioned this one's very appropriate. So if part of your presentation, I'd appreciate if you could just incorporate the process that you went through to come to this conclusion over other sites.
Sure, absolutely. Through our years, we sent out proposals, obviously certified letters to various landowners. I think over the past few years, we've sent out upwards of 15 or 20 letters. Specifically on the town's properties would be the Route 35 2-acre parcel, which is next to the animal hospital, which is 2-acre, kind of wet, but we did look at that. That was rejected by one of the carriers, by the radio frequency engineer. That site, the way the crow flies from the salt dome, is about half mile to, I guess that would be the east. And that gets us too close, or gets the carriers too close to the Leon Levy Preserve Tower. So again, this salt dome location is located perfectly in the middle. That was one town property that was looked at. The other one was, I think it's 11 Main Street, which is the DPW, Department of Public Works here, which is behind the town hall location. And when we were before the town board in July of 2020, we presented site plans for that. And we presented visuals. And I think the overwhelming response from the public, and specifically the lake community that we heard, and we heard loud and clear, was that that was not preferred, that the salt dome was preferred over the DPW. The salt dome was preferred over the DPW site. And that was based upon the visuals of a 120-foot tree pole at the DPW versus a 130-foot structure at the salt dome. So there's town properties that have been looked at. During the process, we're happy to share other properties that were looked at as well, private, but those were the only town properties. I think the school location where the town offices are too far in that area. So those are some of the locations that were considered by Home and Towers. Next slide I can go to is just what we call an elevation. And this is a monopole. When I talk about a standard monopole design, this is a galvanized pole. What you see here are antenna levels. Basically, each carrier has their own level of antennas, and they're separated by 10 feet. So in essence, if this is actually the tree pole. This is 130 foot in height with a 5 foot, what we call a faux top. So this particular set of antennas would be roughly at 125. Next set would be at 115. Next set would be at 105 and 95. They need 10-foot separation for interference issues between themselves.
So each carrier would be.
This is showing for, I'm sorry?
Each carrier would be at a different level.
Correct. Each carrier operates their own equipment and at their own antenna center line. They're all located at the base of the tower with their electronics. We're not proposing a flagpole here. Flagpoles are outdated. What we've found is when you have antennas like this, with everything concealed within branches or on a platform, the carriers are able to put their panel antennas and radio heads up there. There's a lot of antennas that go up. And what's happened over the past 15 years is that they've shrunken their footprint on the ground. They used to put in these massive 20 by 30 shelters with all their electronics and radio cabinets. They've actually moved those electronics into the antennas. So they're putting in a tremendous amount of structural weight on these towers and quite a few antennas. And people ask me, Ray, well, can you propose a flagpole? Certainly you can propose a flagpole. It's not preferred by the carriers for a number of reasons, but what happens on a 130-foot structure, you no longer have the benefit of spreading the antennas out. You now have to stack the antennas, and that will drive the height of the structure. So when you're looking at a 130-foot structure with 4 locations for 4 carriers, flagpoles stretches up immensely and you get 30, 40, 50 feet tall on structures.
Do you have to put another level for EMS, firefighters, and the police?
So what we typically do is we find that public safety, we reserve it for the town, for the top of the tower. They typically will have 2 whip antennas on the top, and then on the lower location down, typically around 60, 70 feet, they'll have their other antennas. One's a set of transmit antennas, one's a set of receive antennas. And that's reserved for the town.
So you're proposing this faux tree for the Salem area? I thought I heard you say it would just be a.
We provided simulations both as a faux tree, a monopine tree, or as a standard galvanized monopole. And we've done some simulation work. I think the next time we appear before the board, we can present even additional simulations. Nothing new, but we want to make sure everybody, for the benefit of new members, that everyone's up to speed on designs and what the aesthetics look like between the 2 designs.
We've been hearing from the convention from the South before. Will there be a visual test for the people in the community to see how high that is?
So we can do a balloon float, which is a visual test, but a balloon's not needed. The company that we use all the time, Saratoga Associates, they have it down to such a science that they can actually superimpose a tower. As long as they have a latitude and longitude and exact location of the tower, they can superimpose where that tower will be in all their photographs. A balloon float is for the benefit of a person in the field to simply see if they can spot the balloon as a focal point or not spot it. It's not needed for the visual test itself. Speaking of visuals, and I wanted to just simply discuss this one with the board. We had provided a visual simulation package to the board, and this is one way we're working at the DPW site here on Main Street for a 120-foot monopine tree. And when we were working for 130-foot, actually 135-foot pole here at the Salt Dome. I think it was, again, heard loud and clear from the lake community that the preference was a DPW site. For those of you who are unable to figure out where the 135-foot monopine tree is, taken from this location, which is the boat launch in the park on Truesdale Lake. That's it right there below the tree line, and that's a stealth monopine. We recently constructed a beautiful 90-foot monopine tree over in New Canaan, stone's throw away from here, obviously, 183 Soundview Lane next to St. Luke's School. That went through a different zoning process because it's in the state of Connecticut. But if any board member ever wants to do a field trip to see a tower up close, to see what it looks like, what it doesn't sound like, a lot of people have misconceptions on this. Happy to make any arrangements to escort any town board members to that particular site, seeing that it's only 10 minutes away, obviously.
I have a follow-up question, if I might. Has, with this proposal with the 130-foot monopole at this location, has there been, and this may be outside of your bailiwick, has there been any quantitative or qualitative study as to how that would, in very tangible terms, increase cell phone coverage in the town of Lewisboro if it was adopted?
Yes, to answer your question, we've had a company called PeerCon, which is a third-party consultant, run what's called coverage plots. They've run various plots at various heights, 150, 130, 100, and 130 fits the bill to provide coverage, not only for the top carrier, but for the 3 local co-locators below. What you need to keep in mind is when you build these sites, it's just not for one carrier. It has to be co-locatable, so all the carriers can benefit, and it prevents tower proliferation, meaning you don't have a tower propping up on an adjacent parcel because the carriers can't use that one pole that was built for everybody.
I appreciate that. Is there a way to answer the question from the perspective of the residents? In other words, by this going in, people on Lake Truesdale who have not had cell phone coverage before X number of homes will have it and didn't have it before. From the perspective of the citizens, is there a way to answer that question?
Sure, absolutely. The coverage maps that we can provide to the town will show various coverages, signal strength, and you can look at it, it's overlaid on a map of the town, and you can see what areas will benefit from the coverage. And it has signal strengths on it. So to answer your question, the folks in the lake community, they'll be able to look at a coverage map for a 130-foot proposed tower at Salt Dome, and they'll be able to say, yes, I will receive reliable coverage from this tower at my home off of the lake, or no, I'm too far away. This is not a silver bullet. It's not going to solve everyone's coverage needs. These sites operate at such a low energy, basically, that doesn't cover a vast amount. And I can get into the whole engineering of it, line of sight, terrain, but typically these sites, I don't like to throw a number on it, but really not much more than a mile out, 3/4 of a mile out, where you have solid, reliable coverage. But the coverage plots tell the story, and I'm happy to, again, provide those to the town.
I have the the ones that were provided by Cityscape.
Yes,
If you want me to share those. in
sure,
terms of-
absolutely. I mean, that's a third party, and that just validates
Right.
what the carriers and what Holman are saying, and those particular coverage plots, they really go into drilling down on the households, number of households.
Who pays for that third-party study?
Westchester County
Okay.
did work.
I have a bunch of questions, but I'm just waiting until you're done.
Sure.
I just want to actually just introduce myself, for those who don't know me. I'm Center President of Towers. And it's always hard for me to listen to someone else present, especially in my town. I know the area very well. Ray did a wonderful job, obviously, but I want to just address a few things. Dan, as far as the wetlands comment, the two options is we obtain the local wetlands permit, or it's town property could be accepted. So those are the two options related to the wetlands permit. The other thing is, as far as the design type, that's really up to the board based on visuals and information we give you as to what you think is most acceptable. I will piggyback on Ray's comments that today, because of the way these systems are designed, they put the radio equipment next to the antennas. So there's a lot more equipment at the top of the tower these days than in the past. We have about 3,000 to 4,000 pounds of equipment that go up on every rad center. So it's very important that we design the facility properly to handle all that weight, handle public safety and all the future needs, so that we don't have to build another tower down the road, and that we can plan properly for what's needed today and in the future. So that's something to keep in mind when we think about other design options. I think the Cityscape report is very valuable because it's a completely third-party report that was done by Westchester County for the benefit of many municipalities in Lower Westchester. And I think that just confirms what we've been saying over the years. And I think it's in line exactly with what we're going to be presenting you. We didn't want to present everything this evening. We wanted to get you back up to speed to where we're at, et cetera, and then get any feedback, questions we have, and then put together a much more thorough package for you guys to review, including coverage maps. As a matter of fact, we're thinking of having another vendor, yet another vendor beyond PeerCon, do some plots as well, so that we have 3 different reference points, including the carriers would be 4.
When you say different plots, what do you mean by that?
So what we do is each company, for example, Cityscape did their own analysis here.
Right.
Now, when you do an analysis, there's different inputs you put in there. So the more you have, the better picture you get, right? So we have already a lot of input from the carriers, from Verizon and AT&T in particular, from Cityscape, from PeerCon. We're actually thinking of adding another vendor as well, just to give you another data point. Because this is an important decision to see what this site does. And I want to also make sure everyone understands that we communicate with the industry on a weekly, monthly basis about their needs. This is the next site in Lewisboro to advance and improve coverage. You can't just arbitrarily place things. This is what they need. Their biggest need to improve coverage is in this area, is in South Salem, the lakes, and the 35 corridor. As Ray said, this is exactly in between the two existing sites in this area. So we don't make up the need, we don't make up what is needed, we just deliver the product. So it's very important to understand, it's not, oh, place it over here, place it over here. It has to be in this general area of South Salem to provide the improvement that the carriers are looking to make here. So it's really important. And as far as the visual resource analysis, we use the best company in the business in Saratoga. They actually developed the process and the protocol with the DEC in New York State. So they do all the parts work, et cetera. So they're very good, and the computer modeling is actually better than the balloon test. But the balloon test does give everyone the opportunity to drive around and see what they can see, right? So a balloon test is if desired by the board and the public, we would obviously do that as well. It's weather dependent. It's the balloon moves. It's not as accurate as the visuals, but you know.
I did it for the Cross River.
We did. And using the Cross River as an example, along with some of the other facilities that are built in town, Vista, et cetera, the town park, you can see how every 10 feet or so is the RAD centers for the carriers. And you need to build the facility tall enough so that everyone gets what they need and improves the coverage the way they want it and the way the residents need for usage. So, and as far as alternatives, well, I can tell you when I moved to Lewisboro a very long time ago, there was absolutely no coverage on only one site, Leon Levy. Leon Levy was not optimal because, as I was discussing with the tenant advisory board, that site was initially in an AT&T long distance tower to provide long distance transmission across the Atlantic. So it wasn't engineered or designed to optimize wireless coverage. That's why it doesn't actually provide much wireless coverage, unfortunately. But that was the only tower we had in town. We've come a long way. I think the last one we did at Cross River made a big impact. This is the next site that's needed from a macro level. I think in reading Cityscape's report, I would tend to agree after this site, the remaining leads are fairly small. It would probably not require the type of facility with this type of height. It'd probably be smaller in some shape or form. So this is sort of the last big macro that's needed for the networks. From there, the coverage areas are going to be much smaller, or the coverage holes rather, will be much smaller, and there'll be different options. But from a funding and from a design perspective, the carriers will not advance their networks in Lewisboro until this site is done, because it's the next piece in the puzzle that's needed. So I think it's very important to understand that.
So I have up on the screen, I'm sharing it over Zoom. These are the coverage maps provided by Cityscape, showing current coverage and the L5 activated. Or if you want to speak to that, Ray or Manny.
Well, the only thing I'll say is when people do coverage plots, and that's why we want to toy with an additional reference point, they're plotting for optimal coverage. That means in your house, in your basement kind of coverage, right? The coverage on street and in car doesn't require as strong of a signal. So when
Can you just,
look at
on that point, would you be able to just describe, because I'm looking at colors and the coverage comparisons, there's blue and there's yellow and there's green. Could you just describe the difference in those, what they signify?
Sure. From their plots, I can tell that the yellow is the strongest signal, the green second strongest, and the blue will be the weakest signal.
Thank you.
But when and everyone uses different colors, but I can tell just by looking at the maps. One of the things you have to understand is the design criteria that the carriers uses for inbuilding. So when they're doing plots, they're going to show you plots of maximum coverage in building. Doesn't mean your phone's not going to work on the street or in the car. We can also model that higher frequency, which in general is like 95 to 105. That gives you adequate in-car and street coverage. But they're designing for in-building. And they're designing for in-building for a lot of different reasons, because it's the best signal strength, and that's what you want to design.
And I think that's what the yellow is here, is the in-building.
Correct.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at plots, it's important for you to ask questions so you really get an understanding for it. It's not that complicated. It really is about signal strength, and certain signal strength allows you to do different things, right? So certain signal strength will penetrate the building materials, others won't. And I always qualify that because people want to know, what am I getting? What are we getting at? So what kind of coverage are we getting? And it's a very fair question. The carriers will try to answer that from an in-building best coverage perspective, but the reality of it is there's going to be additional coverage that is represented in the plots. And we can model that at those higher frequencies so you get an understanding of that as well. Even though it's not carrier design criteria, it is what it is.
For the benefit of just looking at this coverage map, this slide to the left, L4, that is the town park. It shows this red circle here. This is 35 in the bend where the salt dome is located. A lot of white, obviously, and 35 continuing. I think it's L6 where Leon Levy is off the map here. Going to the slide on the right, again, the town park. And L5 at the salt dome, you can see how it fills in very nicely with basically the yellows and the greens, which is the strongest signal. Certainly goes up into the Truesdale Lake area up in here.
And for those of you that weren't around when we did crossover, our predictions, and Tony, I think, and Dan, I think you remember this, our predictions of where the coverage would carry were right on. They carried right up and just before about Todd Road on 121. It was about there, and then we knew that it was going to be great. We knew it was going to carry east on 35 far enough to connect to the town park. We knew it was going to cover the middle school and the high school. We knew it was going to connect to the top of the hill going east on 35. And as you know, once you get past that hill, the coverage kind of weans a little bit because there's still another facility needed in that area, most likely. But
Going west on 35.
Going west.
Yeah,
So using Cross River as an example of the data we presented to the board, it was pretty much right on. It was right on what we modeled, what we anticipated. So if there's any kind of reservation or question of how accurate are these, they're pretty accurate. The only thing to watch out for and ask questions are, what does the power or the coverage level really mean as far as my coverage? Does it mean I can use my phone in the car, on the street, or in my home? Because there's a big difference in that.
Questions?
I do. I wanted to make sure that they were finished. So they were giving a big presentation. So you talked about the fact that you're providing a tower and there's going to be 4 carriers on the tower, correct?
We designed for 4 carriers, for commercial wireless carriers and for public safety.
You mentioned that in doing your study on the property that's adjacent to the veterinary clinic on 35, that one of the carriers rejected. That's 1 out of 4 carriers rejected the site for whatever the reasons were, wetlands or something.
It was 1 out of 2. The second one really didn't approve it. They were still looking at it. The problem is it's too close to Leon Levy and too far from the town park. So it's not getting, see this additional coverage that we get into the lakes, we're probably not going to be getting that from that area. And like I said, that's not really our decision of what's acceptable or not. It's really It's really the carriers. In particular, Verizon rejected that outright. They said it would not work, even at a taller height, even at 160, 170, they said it would not do the same job as a site at the salt dome.
Well, Leon Levy's not doing his job either, because I get no coverage in my house and I'm behind it.
For the reason I stated, it was not really a tower that was designed for cellular.
Yeah,
It was just
so,
used for it.
all right, so, my next question is, now, a reason why the town would be interested in having this on its property is obviously its revenue. So what type of revenue annually would the town be looking at if it were to agree to allow a tower on another piece of its property?
So it would be the same model that we did for Cross River, which is what we do with our municipal landlords is we create a partnership. We create a base rent that's guaranteed, and then we give you a percentage, a gross percentage of all rents over time. And that percentage is 35%. It's the same deal, and we can share this with you that we've done with municipalities throughout the tri-state area, throughout Westchester. It's a sustainable deal because it's a gross deal. If it were net, it would probably be around 50%. There's no investment by the town. All the capital, all the work is done by us. So by creating that kind of a contract where we have a minimum base rent, but we know that we're going to make money over time as we add carriers. So then we have a revenue share, because at some point you're going to be making a lot more money on revenue on the revenue share than you will on the base.
I understand. I still haven't heard numbers. I want to
Yes,
share
the guy back there.
approximately how much money is the town looking to gain by adding this tower? Because people, that they want to know. They want to know, why is this worth it to us to do it? And when you're talking about putting a cell tower, in back of Echo Farm, where my daughter took riding lessons, and it's one of the most beautiful views in the town. And then the view from the farm across the way, which is a historic site, we have to take this seriously. I understand that the people in the lakes, they don't want to see it either. I see the difference visually, and it impairs what they've come to love their community to be. So if we're going to make an important decision about putting something like this in somebody's backyard, I want to know what the numbers are, and so does the public.
So the base numbers is $2,000 a month, or 35%, whichever is greater.
Mhm.
We can model that for you and produce a rent projection over time,
Yes.
and then you can see that and you can share that. So we'll do that for you. I will say this is going to be a difficult decision for any board. I live in town, so I understand the area.
Yes, I met you. I met you last year, I remember.
And I can tell you that, and I know people are listening, and maybe this will hit the papers, but anyone who wants to make their property available will evaluate it. Unfortunately, we've looked for quite a long time, and other than the town properties, I don't think there is a property that's available. So we're down to a situation where we can present all the materials that, are appropriate for you to review, to make a decision. You can ask any questions you want. Everything's on open and on the table, but ultimately it's going to be a tough decision.
So let me ask you
Yeah.
this, sorry, I was just
Yeah, go ahead,
saving
go
it all
ahead.
to the end, Tony,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So if the town says no, we say, no, we're not going to agree to have this on town property, we're done. What do you do then?
Nothing,
So no tower.
no improvement in service, because there is no other way. We need a macro site, and there is no other, unless a private party offers their property to us for us to evaluate and to contract with. It has to work, obviously. Then there is no solution. And we have the same conversation at Cross River. Because I live in town, it's a different conversation.
Right.
Anyone want to lease us? Contact us. I don't think there is. That's the problem. And just similar to Cross River, there was no place. We went to the shopping center, we went to the condo association, we went everywhere to look. There was no place other than the Outback. I think we're in a similar situation here. So the answer to your question, if the town doesn't want to move forward, then we need another property to go to. If there is no other property to go to, then there is no macro site and there is no improvement coverage in this area.
Yeah, when you and I had our conversation last year, when I was walking around and knocking on doors, it was very brief. So I understand that I may not have understood the full concept of what you were saying, but I thought that you had said something along the lines of it's going in, whether it goes on town property, like it's mandated that it has to go in, that coverage has to be provided, and it's going to go somewhere. So if the town doesn't provide the property, it's going somewhere. This is going to happen. Now, mind you, I'm shortening what it is that you were trying to tell me, so I want to give you an opportunity to explain to me
What I
what you
meant
meant.
by that
Okay.
is if we had a private park released to us and it was the only thing available to us and we went to the zoning process, et cetera, it would have to get approved because there is no other option. So that's what I meant. In this particular case, I don't think there is a private option. And it was similar to in Cross River, there wasn't a private option. So in this particular case, I think it puts this board on the spot, sort of. Because unless there's a private party out there that wants to, and look, we sent proposals to Echo Farm, we sent proposals to a lot of the neighbors in this area. It's a highly residential area. It's a beautiful area. You know, people are not.
Well, all of Lewisboro is pretty much
They're not
residential.
eager to lease to us. It's very difficult to find someone that'll lease to you, but this is an important
But what-
issue for the community as well.
What about what we've been hearing about the five? I brought this up when we were listening to the other presentation by Cityscape. What about the 5G technology that everybody's been hearing about, the lower towers? Now, I understand that where there's a lot of trees, it's an issue. But there may be residents who want to guarantee that they get coverage in the lake communities that are willing to put things in their yard, on their roof, what have you, to save having to look at something that they don't want to look at.
It's a really good question, and here's the answer. And I think Cityscape agrees, based on what I read in your report. You need to create the backbone of geographic coverage before you can supplement with a different layer of coverage, okay? You can't just go and put things on poles to create the type of geographic coverage you get from the macro site. You need to have the macro sites in place, and then whatever additional quality, capacity, and small holes that are left can then be addressed by those type of sites, pole attachments, smaller sites, etc. But if you don't have the basic geographic coverage, the two things are going to happen. Number one, it doesn't work technically. I think anyone who knows how these networks work will agree with that. And secondly, the carriers aren't going to invest money in something that isn't going to work and benefit their networks and produce the results that they want. So for two reasons, there's no forget about the tall macro, let's go and do something else. Let's do the gas, let's do the smaller towers. You can't, not in a geographic area like this. You need to have that macro geographic coverage, and Bedford is struggling with this as well and going through the same issue. You need to have the macro coverage. And I think that's why the county hired Cityscape, for everyone to understand it from a party outside of the industry, so to speak. You need to have that macro coverage. It's the backbone of the network. If you don't have that, you can't make further improvements beyond that because you need that backbone. So even if that's what everybody wanted, it really couldn't happen because the carriers wouldn't do it. So it wouldn't benefit their network and get them what they need.
Yes, Cityscape actually in their March presentation, they mentioned, I think it was like at least 3 macro sites is what they were looking at for the town of Lewisboro. Additional, right.
Are you done with your?
Yes.
I just didn't want to interrupt your questions. This is right near a cemetery. Is it, I just really want to be careful and respectful of the cemetery and people, the loved ones whose family are interred in the cemetery. If we put this tower here, will there be consideration and respect during the construction?
That's a lot of it. One of the benefits of the town hosting a facility is you have a lot of control, both contractually and otherwise, and how it happens, when it happens, what time of year it's done, et cetera. So there's a lot of control. Unfortunately, we find ourselves next to schools sometimes. We find ourselves next to cemeteries. We find ourselves next to a lot of things that we wish we weren't next to. I think if you look at Cross River, we're next to a cemetery there as well. So I think we're willing and should do whatever we can to respect the environment we're working in, whether that's landscaping or other or design choices, et cetera. But it's unfortunate that's the way land use is. You have to work with what you have available. I can tell you that we don't discriminate as far as our landlords. If there was another landlord who had a better property, we'd be happy to go there. I'm not sure if that exists, and maybe that could develop. I'm not sure out of this process and this dialogue. Right now, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, and I just want to get back to the point about the revenue that Andrew brought up. So from my perspective, I wouldn't be looking at this as a revenue. That's not the reason we'd be doing this. I'd be looking at it more from a safety. And we had an issue about a month and a half, 2 months ago, where Chief Falcone was actually here, actually mentioned that there was no communication through Verizon from their cars, from the computer systems in their cars. Soon after I got that call, I got a call from Vista Fire Department that there was something going on with the Verizon service. They couldn't get a call. There's a call from LVAC that they couldn't answer. That's when I called Verizon, and they actually had an equipment failure, router or something at the Leon Levy tower that went bad. They replaced it by, I think, that evening. But Verizon did say that if we had this extra tower in place, the problem wouldn't have been as expansive as it was.
Well, it's part of having that backbone network, that redundancy. I'm not sure if I wholeheartedly agree with Cityscape that we need 2 more macros. I think it depends on what they
mentioned 123 between here and the.
I've always said, on maybe not so much 123, but what's the other road that goes parallel to it by the park in that area?
Elmwood.
Elmwood Road, yeah.
Somewhere on that area closer to the Richfield border is probably a good idea. I mentioned that in the past, but it's a tough area as well.
Right.
I mentioned that we're currently in zoning North Salem at the Hammond Museum. That site might actually cover into 121 as far as 138, so it could help in that area.
Right.
So we'll see how it goes. I think I've always said let's see what the coverage actually is similar to Cross River, and then take it from there.
Right.
But this is clearly the next big site that needs to be done. I think the carriers agree, I think Cityscape agrees, we agree, but it's not easy. From there, we'll see what's left. Like I said, I'm not sure if I completely agree with Cityscape. We'll see what it looks like, but as these networks evolve and we get, into the wireless world more and more, and the networks expand and the usage expands on those networks. We're talking about a lot of different frequencies that are being used. Some of them are higher bands. Those higher bands don't travel very well. But I live in town, and I can tell you, I know where the spots are that we still need coverage. 35 going west into Bedford. We're working on a project with Bedford in that area right now, with hopefully their cooperation. We know that there's a little dead spot on 138 as you go from Increase Miller to 684. It's annoying. We know it's there. I don't know what can be done about it, but that probably wouldn't require a very tall tower. It requires something, right? Hopefully the site at Hammond Museum covers south into Lewisboro fairly well. We don't need to do anything in that area. Maybe in the Elmwood area and 123 area, probably closer to Elmwood. There's something that's going to be needed. I'm not
No.
sure, I haven't analyzed those to the degree that we really would need to. What I do know is this area is where the carriers have funding, where they have a desire and need. And
Is-
they want their next site.
Well, I know when we had a power outage or a storm over by where I live in that area, not only did we lose Cablevision, we lost Verizon, and then I didn't have any, no matter how far out into the road I went, I didn't get cell coverage because the battery on the tower died. And so, you know, there I am, like I'm sure many other residents found themselves, we're talking about danger. My son had friends over. If one of them fell and broke their arm, who am I calling? Nobody. So, you know, I couldn't call them on my house phone. I couldn't call them on my cell phone. I was gonna send up smoke signals, but that's a whole nother issue. Battery dies on a tower, you know, you would hope that there would be a generator or something that would keep it going, and it didn't happen. And that wasn't the storm that lasted with the longest repercussions following it. And the storm that we had the most damage for the longer period of time, we were out for the longest, I had cell coverage. So.
Well, I think that's all circumstantial. If I remember, Tony, that incident where Leon Levy went down, I think the reason why the batteries went out is because they couldn't.
During the storm, yeah.
During the storm, a tree had fallen down on the access road and they couldn't refuel their generator to recharge the batteries. So that's a circumstance that, I don't know.
It's a particular circumstance.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's not a regular
So you're
happening.
gonna have those kind of things,
Yeah.
but the sites, like I live near the 138 tower, right? We developed that, and I can tell you that I haven't had a problem when we've had other outages. Luckily, that site, there's really no trees that go down with the utilities, et cetera. And the way that it's backed up and access, it always works. It's always worked. It doesn't mean that's going to be the case in the future, but you have circumstances. It's all the more important to have more than one site.
What concerns me is that, and I appreciate the detail in the presentations this evening. And I heard what the speaker mentioned earlier, that you were basically right on the money in determining how the Cross River cell tower was going to work out, meaning your predictions as to anticipated coverage turned out to be accurate, as if I understood what you were saying correctly. So taking that as being so, I'm hoping that we could get some kind of accurate information as to how accepting this proposal in a tangible way would increase and improve cell phone coverage. I've been listening to these presentations back when I was on the planning board, and again here on the town board. What nobody has said, because when it comes to municipal services, usually people can quantify it. X dollars is going to take care of 1 mile of road. If we do this, it's going to improve electricity efficiency by X%. What I'd like to know, I've heard about where we're proposing. I've heard that I think it was the $2,000 a month. And I know that this is going to have a permanently detrimental effect to the bucolic nature of this area in South Salem and in the center and the Hamlet Echo Farm in that area. So I absolutely need to know to be able to make an informed decision that by doing this, if you said to me, 250 households in the South Salem area are going to see their signal improve by 25% or something, in some kind of way that I can get a handle on what it's going to do, as opposed to what we've advanced and improve cell phone coverage. I just need to get more of a handle of what it's going to do so I can make an informed decision, speaking for myself.
I think that's very fair, and I think we're prepared to do our best to present that data for the board. And any other data that you have concerns with or you need information on. What we want to do, because we started this, as Ray said, about 2 years ago. And it's a difficult process, it's decision making. And I think at the time, the consensus of that board was, well, we have this company Cityscape doing a report, just started at that time. Maybe we should wait to see what they said. And we stopped working on the project. quite frankly, until that time. We kept looking to see if there was alternatives, if there was anybody else that would lease us. We evaluated this full property, but we really haven't done much since then. We wanted to come back tonight, reintroduce the project, so to speak, get a sense, give you a sense of what we've done, what it is. We have new board members, et cetera. And then take your feedback and, you know, the feedback of, we want to know what it covers exactly, homes, et cetera. We want, you know, a VRA has to get done. We can produce, what we'd like to do is send you what we did so far. And then you tell us what you think we need to do in addition to that. So that's what we'd like to do from that perspective. And the reason why I want to bring yet another radio frequency engineering firm to take a look at this is exactly the concerns that you guys brought up. We want to know what it does. I want to know what it does.
When you said VRA, what does that stand for?
Visual resource analysis.
Okay.
So it's a full visual report. If we need to do a balloon test at some point, do that. So I think what you need to tell us, is, and we've already heard some of it, is what do you need from us as far as information, as far as facts, put in front of you, as far as any revisions of site plan, et cetera. Now, we've looked at this a bunch of different times. We, you know, it's a balance between the highway department and their needs, the environmental status of the property, et cetera. I think we found the best location on this property, but, you know.
Yeah, I know, we just at that point, we had discussed an area behind the salt dome, which I understand puts you right within the 100-foot buffer, DEC buffer.
We could do that, but everything's gonna be subject to the DEC wetlands permit.
So my question is, with the LVAC site, was that within the 100-foot?
So it's an interesting question that I had before this meeting. The LVAC site was a Main Street designated property, which eliminates the whole setback issue. Because
Main Street being a New York State designation.
No, it's a DEP.
DEP.
So what happens is if it's a Main Street designated area, we automatically have to do a SWIP. So then the wetland buffers don't really apply.
So could that be done here?
We're gonna look, I have to check with Jan Johannesson to see if it is a wetland designated property. If it is, then we don't really need to worry about the DEP other than their approval through the review of the SWIP. But the DEC is different. The DEC is going to require a permit because we are encroaching on that 100-foot wetland, and that is a DEC designated wetland. So
the LVAC site is not a DEC wetland?
No, it's only a DEP because it's right next to the reservoir, not a wetland. So it gets complicated.
Yeah.
I always get frustrated between the two, but one thing I know, if we go in any other area that's within those wetlands, we will need a DEC permit. That doesn't mean we won't get one. It just means it's another permit we have to get, and it's outside of your control and our control. I think we would get it, but it could take some time, and it's not certain.
So I'm also just curious, or would like to have assurance that, you know, all the other activity that's going on there that's in process, whether it be the salt dome or the mulching activity, you know, just to make sure that their proposed layout is going to be, you know, accommodate that, and the three activities together don't, you know, suddenly discover something that doesn't work between them. And then also, I'm just curious if in the course of your construction, maybe there are other opportunities for aesthetic improvements that would actually be, you know, welcome to the neighbors in this area that help to mitigate things. And I don't know what those might be, but, you know.
But I think that's really important. It has to be thoughtful. And one of the things that I find going through this process, very difficult job that we have, especially since most of the remaining holes are residential areas. So we're talking about we build cell towers in residential areas all the time. It's not an easy thing to do. My suggestion is this, the parties that have the strongest interest, whether it be the cemetery, whether it be the farm, whoever it is, that we engage in a productive dialogue of what can be done. Because if I put a bunch of row of trees around my compound, it might not do a thing. But if we can engage in off-site landscaping that is meaningful, that does something. If we can improve the condition of the cemetery in some meaningful way, that kind of offsets, whatever impact we're introducing.
Or
Those
this is
are-
probably a crazy idea, but your equipment down at the bottom there, can it be housed in a kind of a barn structure that looks like it fits into the neighborhood or something?
Based on where it's
Probably
at, probably wouldn't see it, but maybe the right thing to do is make some improvements to the cemetery, make some landscaping, making some fieldstone wall improvements, whatever it is. Point is too often what happens is folks want to stop us for whatever reason and say, oh, we don't want this. Well, have to be thoughtful about that. What don't you want? Everyone wants the coverage. Everyone wants the benefits of this. You don't want the negative things that potentially come with it. If we can have, instead of an adversarial kind of approach and conversation about it, we have one that where people bring suggestions and thoughts to the table where we can make this the best project it can be, where we can mitigate whatever impacts there are out there. I think that's the approach that we prefer to take. We have no problem doing that. I'd much rather prefer to do that than engage in an argument with people and then do something that's meaningless just to say we did something. That doesn't make any sense. Exactly. And I think, we heard a lot of comments about Cross River when we were doing that. I heard a lot of comments about the Vista site. We developed that at the firehouse as well. Some funny stories, people get, very vested in their communities and there are perceptions that are real and some that are not. One of the stories of the Vista firehouse site is one of the people that are most adamant about, fighting the project in the tower had actually called the supervisor 6 weeks after the tower went up, asking when was the tower going up. So I always chuckle at that because we can't get all upset about something. This is going to be a difficult decision, whether it's this board, a planning board, whatever board this is in front of. It's going to be a difficult decision. Our job is to present the materials, the facts, and do the best job we can as an applicant, as a developer. And I'd rather focus all my efforts in that than pick a fight with anything. So, okay.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for your presentation.
Welcome. I think what we'd like to know as far as direction from the board is you have a lot of data available through Cityscape, through what we've already given previous town board. You have an intent advisory board that can add a lot of value here. What we need from you folks is sort of a game plan and direction so that we can put everything in front of you that you need to make a decision. Whether that decision is, yeah, this is what we're going to do, it makes sense, or no, we don't want to do it. So I would ask that you discuss it and get back to us with what you want to see from us and what steps you would like us to take next. This is a little bit different process than going to zoning. The zoning, we have a lease, we have a site, submit an application. In this particular case, you have to make a decision whether you want to contract with us or not. So it's a little different. Okay. So if you could do that within the next few weeks, I think it would be productive for us to be able to start putting that information together or accumulating, organizing it in a way that we can digest it.
Okay, so we'll do that. We'll circle up.
And
Thank
reach
you.
out to our constituents and,
I mean, I think
ducks
that,
in a row.
I think the DEC, and I know we have discussed that alternative location behind the salt dome. You can look at that. And
We will,
it's an
and
option.
there is no, just understand, we can't call the DEC and ask them about that. This is-
Okay.
We have to file a
You have
permit
to actually-
application.
right.
They're not going to engage in that kind of dialogue with us.
Right.
So just understand if that's something that the board wants to see and makes sense, we're okay doing it. Just understand that it takes a little control away from you. And it puts us in a permit process that may be uncertain. We've gotten DEC permits like this before, so it's not out of the question.
Okay. All right, thank you both.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll go on to the second item on the new business. This was a request for SEPTA, Special Education PTO, for fundraiser at Town Park on September 30th. And for waiving of fees. So I would like to motion that we waive the fees for the SEPTA fundraiser at Town Park on September 30th.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
The next is approving Walkable Country Club's application for a cabaret license. This is annual, correct, Jen? It's annual. Let's go through this. So I motion that we approve their application for a cabaret license.
Just so the public understands, that's to allow them to have music and things for weddings and
Correct.
occasions.
Right. Second,
Second.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next one is approving AAA Carting and Rubbish Removal Inc.'s application for a license to collect and dispose of refuse and recyclables in the town of Lewisboro. So motion to approve their application to collect and dispose of refuse and recyclables. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The next one is, this came from the Golden Bridge Hamlet Organization. It's approving a waiver of the EQ, the environmental questionnaire and wetlands permit fees for the Golden Bridge Pocket Park.
So moved.
This second,
Second.
discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
The other, okay, the next one here is authorizing, so the planning board is, so they're looking for the town board to authorize them to consider and act upon Smithbridge Associates' request for a partial release of the performance bond for construction of a car wash. They have a CO for that car wash, and part of that release is they're requesting it, the final portion of that performance bond gets released 1 year after the issue of the CO. And that's in the adjoining the letter that was attached to the packet, planning board letter. So I'd like to motion that we authorize the planning board to consider and act upon Smithbridge Associates' request for the release, partial release of the performance bond for the car wash. Do I have a second?
Second, the question.
Mhm.
So in other words, we're saying it's okay on our side, we're authorizing you, to make the judgment whether or not they met the criteria to release it at this point, right? They're not,
Yeah,
That's my understanding.
we're not making the criteria.
no, I understand that,
Yes.
but they're not saying here that we've reviewed it and
Correct.
whether they made their criteria. So
There was a
you're
memo
told that-
attached from Janet Anderson.
Yeah, it's on page 24 of the packet.
This board's releasing. Authorizing the release. Planning board can't authorize the release, the part of the reduction.
Correct.
They conducted a public hearing, which they have to do before sending it to you.
Mhm.
And that basically 90% reduction.
So I'm just, when I read the memo, it's kind of a little odd. They say they've received a request. They may close, the planning board, upon approval, them may close.
Following due notice in a public hearing, which is what.
It's resolved
just-
that
Right.
the town board becomes
Then
the planning board seeks approval authorizing it to consider and act on the requested bond reduction. So like, it's just not worded the way I expected it. Like I would have expected them to say, we reviewed it,
Right.
it meets the criteria. We, as
Send
far
it
as
back
we're
to you.
concerned, it's good. It's going back to you to make the final decision.
Because you're the entity that authorizes the release of the partial release of the security. So if you wrote it, then it's released, it's reduced to that amount.
Yeah, so I'm just not reading that
Fair
they're
enough.
saying they met the criteria. Instead, it says the town board is being notified that the planning board seeks approval, authorizing it to consider and act upon. It's a little bit strange, but I guess.
Well, the construction already occurred. There weren't any performance issues.
That's fine. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what I was looking for in this memo, but I mean, I'm, if that's what
It
was
wasn't as
intended.
straightforward as you would have liked it to be.
No,
Yeah.
no, I like.
But I did confirm today that the CO was issued in June. So
Okay.
they have a CO.
So they wouldn't have done
Right.
it. All right,
Yeah.
so. and it's fine.
And you're good with the second? You're gonna stick with your second?
Yeah.
Pam? Okay.
Okay.
And I
discussion?
guess that was
That
the
was the
discussion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so. Next item we have is the community event and pool party. So this was an application by Allison Biddle to conduct a community event to move the
It will be the
Movie
second
night, movie day,
annual,
second
second
annual.
annual family swim and movie night.
right.
So it would be that the pool stays open at from a
Open.
certain. And there's popcorn and snacks, and the kids and their families watch an age-appropriate movie together out under the stars. So it was a nice event that I helped Allison participate in last year, and just it was not a political event. It was not sponsored with political funds. It was all donations from various businesses in town, as well as from Allison and I and Bill Bongiorno. We did it together out of our own private funds, not because we wanted to make it open to everyone. So Allison's idea was that this could become a Lewisboro tradition that happens once a year with community support. And that's why she is started to sponsor it again. So it's open to everyone in the community. And so she's looking like other community events for a waiver of the fees. It's open.
Mhm.
She's not
So-
asking for $1,000 like Garibaldi Association had made a request for. This is not that. This is just a waiver of the fees.
What about the actual pool?
Was,
Like, it would be made freely available.
To the residents of the
Is it a-
town.
Yeah, is it a normal pool day, like?
It's a normal pool day. Last year they did it during the week. It's a normal pool day. I can't remember whether we extended the hour of the pool by an hour, or whether the last hour and a half was open for entrance for free. And then we got the insurance and everything ourselves for the pool. et cetera.
And the town is covering the cost of the lifeguards and
Correct. and waiver of the fees. Well, she
So-
paid for whatever it is in the application fee.
what, because my understanding that having, as you move deeper into the summer, you have difficulty getting staff at the pool. It's already
Well,
a problem, yeah.
I'm sure
But
they'll cross that bridge when we come to it. If there's no staff available, then we cross that bridge when you come to it. And, whether she decides that she'll make it just a movie night or what have you, but
Right. But just to make it clear, and I don't recall how it was done last year, the salaries that are being paid for a couple of hours, whatever, I forget the hours. It's the town that's picking that up, right?
it's the town. I believe what happens is that we do it the regular hours of the pool, so there's no additional staff. It's just that the people who enter during the time they're having the event don't pay the entrance fee to the pool.
Right.
So the staff is already there.
How come is Allison not available this evening?
She's not available this evening.
Well, it sounds great to me.
Yeah.
Just want to clarify.
I just want clarification so folks are aware that until, because it says from 6 to 10:30. So are
Yes.
we having lifeguards on duty? Pool
Well, the
closes
pool-
at 7?
The pool will close.
Yeah.
And then they'll come outside and set up, and then the movie starts as soon as it
Oh,
gets
so-
dark.
So the pool session is only during when?
I believe so, yes. So
Okay,
the only staff that's needed from the park, I believe last year, the only staff that remained was Michael Portnoy, just because we were using electricity from the pool house to run the popcorn machine.
Mhm.
But no one was in the pool, there were no lifeguards or what have you, but there were a few staff members there that remained to make sure that
Mhm.
everything was in order and we put everything away and the wires were put away, et cetera.
okay.
So there is staff. But I believe that's covered by the fee.
Sounds great.
Covered
Might be
by
good
the
to get
fee.
input from Parks and Rec, just to.
Covered by the fee that we're waiving.
Well, that's what it would normally do. We're
It is
asking
waived,
for
yeah.
that's right. That would be the town's contribution to the community event.
The only thing she's not doing it as part of an organization. She's just doing it as an individual.
No, correct. Just like you were going to have that concert, same concept.
But I think with the concert, I don't think there were any town employees working the concert. I don't think.
Well, they would have
Rich?
had to have been if you're using the park. The same.
No, there wasn't going to be, but it just got rained out, but there wasn't going to be.
So do we need to act tonight and waive the fees? Is
Well,
that
we
a-
do because the
It's this
event has
weekend.
to happen.
Yeah,
This weekend, right?
she's hoping to have the event
So-
after this week.
Yes.
So from 6 to 10:30.
It's the second date? Is that a rain date or something?
Well, she said in the second email that she sent to us that she wouldn't want to conflict with the South Salem firefighter parade and
Correct.
fair. So she's shooting for next week. I don't
Yes.
remember the exact date.
Okay, so here's.
It would be
says the
probably
12th.
the Friday after, let's see.
So Friday the 12th, there's 2 dates here.
Yeah, and neither one of them are actually what she wants to have.
So.
I think
I'm
she's shooting
supposed-
for August 19th.
Yes.
Oh,
So can we waive the fees, contingent on, conflicts under, recognized by the Parks and Rec or the parade or whatever.
Yes.
Thanks.
19th would sound better. It's not conflicting with the carnival.
Correct.
That-
okay, with that. So you,
That was kind of
that was
sloppy.
kind of a sloppy motion. You
But,
want a motion? Yeah. Okay,
What
so
do we not want to conflict with? The carnival?
Carnival.
Well,
Anything else?
right, subject to there not being a conflicting event at the time, at the date, time, and place, and
We're
location.
gonna get
Right.
some kind of
Input from
indication
Parks
from
and
Parks
Rec.
and Rec that
Exactly.
that there's no other issue.
No conflicts.
Okay, so note that we waive the fees for the community night swim and outdoor movie event. Subject to there being no conflict with the carnival and to the Parks and Rec indicating that there is no logistical problems on their side.
I'll second.
Yeah. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next item, we'll go back to this. The Lexipol proposal for the police department. What's that?
I should have had this earlier.
Yeah. That's right, yes. So the chief is here.
Yeah, tell us about Lexipol.
Chief, maybe you can just give us a summary.
So that people did hear, because a lot of it's kind of in the packages that I handed out.
Yep.
But police agencies today face challenges of keeping personnel safe and healthy, reducing risk and maintaining a positive reputation. Add to that, the dynamically changing legislative landscape and evolving best practices, and even the most progressive, forward-thinking departments can struggle to keep up. Lexipol solutions are designed to save time and money while protecting personnel and the community. The team at Lexipol consists of professionals with expertise in public safety, law, policy, training, mental health, and grants. They continually monitor changes and trends in legislation, case law, and best practices, and use this knowledge to create policies, training, wellness resources, and funding services that minimize risk and help us effectively serve our community. So what is LexiPol? LexiPol was founded by public safety experts who saw a need for a better, safer way to run a police agency. Since the company launched in 2003, LexiPol has grown to form an entire risk management solution for public safety and local government. Today, LexiPol serves over 8,100 agencies and municipalities and 2 million public safety and government professionals. Customers choose LexiPol to make an investment in the safety and security of their personnel, their agencies, and their communities. They help agencies address issues that create substantial risks, including inconsistent, outdated policies, lack of technology to easily update and issue policies, and training electronically. Unchecked mental health needs of the staff, difficulty keeping up with new and changing legislation and practices, and inability to produce policy and acknowledgement and training documentation. So basically, in a nutshell, policies and procedures of the Lewisboro Police Department is in an old 3-ring binder. It's about 160 policies and procedures. Having this company would bring it up to date, a lot of the policies and procedures that I haven't updated since the police reform. So I have updated your big, a lot of the use of force, the duty to intercede, the big, the top 10. However, there's others, that'll uniform, how to wear your uniform, there's so many different things and policies and procedures in that book where you'd have to discipline your officers, and this spells it out. And instead of giving a 3-ring binder to all my officers, which I have 16 of, they could go online. It's digital. They could sign off on it when they read it, they accept it, and now they're trained in this. So typically, when I put out a new procedure or a policy, I would have to draft it up myself, and I'm not an attorney, get it approved by maybe the town attorney, which time and money. And then on top of that, I have to hold an all-hands training, which I have 16 officers, 4-hour minimum. Do the math, it's around $3,000 to train officers on 2 or 3 policies that I just put out. This right here will let me put it out. I sit down with the team at LexiPol, probably about once a week, twice a week, go over about 4 to 5 policies that have to do with and apply to the town of Lewisboro and the Lewisboro Police Department, push that out to my men electronically, my men and women electronically, and boom, they sign off on it. They understand it. They're trained on it daily as well.
So the base for this manual is the current policy manual that you have. So they would transpose that into an electronic.
It would definitely be updated, because a lot of it is, like I said, I did the important ones that had to do with the whole police reform. And then there's some older ones that I'm still constantly working on. And as soon as you work on it, there's new legislation out there. So there's new laws every year, raise the age, bail reform, all these new laws. I need policies and procedures on. So my officers know what to do when they respond to a call.
Right.
So, but they're gonna have to ingest your current manual essentially.
Yes.
And then each policy is gonna have to get reviewed versus what you're talking about, the changes that have come along. So that's that initial $14,000, whatever.
Correct.
Setup fee.
So they take that book, they look at it, they compare it to what the most updated rules, laws, legislation is. They update the whole book. And then, and it's available electronically. The officers can look at it. They can access it from their phones in the car in time with when they respond to the scene. And in addition, as you all know, everything's changing almost on a daily basis. There's new cases. So every time something like that happens, which causes a change in policy, boom, it's done. And they get a notification that they have to read the new policy, and they're trained in it.
So I think it's great that, go digital, and that way you can save time by, getting notified by them, like there's new policies you have to comply with. But I'm also concerned that it's not just
just a, cut and paste from whatever they have as well, because like some of the things may be absolutely required, but some are just sort of best practices and may or may not be something that works for Lewisboro here. It may be designed for somewhere else.
No, and Dan, I'm gonna be sitting down with them at least once or twice a week, going over anywhere from 2 to 5 policies or whatever it is. I haven't done this, but again, my part-time lieutenant has done this with Putnam County Sheriff's Office.
Chief, is this company, have they been approved or by applicable law enforcement organizations that they've had field experience with them?
100%. The Westchester County Police Association, as well as the International Chiefs Association and New York State Chiefs Association also. Everybody I talk to recommends I go this route, that they already do.
Those organizations have a track history with this company and they recommend that you proceed forward with them, yes?
Correct.
Thank you.
How about actual municipalities? You're saying Putnam?
Yeah, Putnam County Sheriff's just finished their process with them.
I think Ossining has it as well, if I remember when I was reading through the materials, when I sat down with you for the presentation. Ossining and some other towns down county also implement this.
And this also sets you up for accreditation. So if your police agency wants to get accredited for New York State, all these policies and procedures are constitutionally sound and up to date policies.
If I may, you would be able to, if they do roll something out and it doesn't fit Lewisboro, I mean, if we care more about civil rights or something than another community, you would be able to say.
I would be able to tweak that policy.
And make it fit Lewisboro.
100%.
Right.
Because we're unique. We also work with state police. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a unique policies and procedure handbook, and being digitalized, I'd also be able to put that on our town website under the Lewisboro Police. So anybody could go out there and look at our policies and procedures.
Yeah, because I saw an example where this is down like some Texas border town or something, and they had adopted kind of lock, stock, and barrel, and some immigrant had come over or whatever, and I forget the example, but like they held them for a month, and they were they said, okay, well, this is constitutional, I can do this, but that doesn't mean you have to do it. There may be instances where you look at that and say there may be a way which works better for us, which we don't have to go that far. So that would be my only concern, that to be a real thoughtful, uptake of whatever proposed.
Sure.
So there's a footnote here, an asterisk note at the bottom of the pricing that says law enforcement pricing is based on 3 law enforcement sworn officers. What does that mean? Because you mentioned having 16 officers trained.
I'm not seeing this. Oh,
It's at the
Bottom
bottom
of page
of
five.
the table, the pricing table.
Is that just-
I believe that's for, that would be myself, the lieutenant, and the sergeant sitting down with Lexipol representatives going over policies and procedures.
Okay.
The actual training
the
and
actual
the new policy is
train the
gonna be
trainer,
you to your.
basically.
that's right.
Well, they'd have their generic 160 policies and procedures that are kind of pre-written already for departments in New York State. And then we would tweak them
Right,
to how it would reflect and how we want it to happen in Lewisboro.
okay,
So that's the 3.
okay.
So you think this is a good thing?
I've been trying to work on this for the last 2 years, and just the formatting alone and just trying to write policies and procedures. Like I said, I'm not an attorney. This is something that, lawyers kind of get together, and present it. I mean, again, I could copy and paste it from other departments or Westchester County, but again, it's not specific towards Lewisboro, like you just stated that you'd like to see happen.
And just the sort of mechanics of physically putting this together. I mean, we've been talking about the admin load and how to deal with that. And this sounds like a sensible way to knock off a chunk of it, as long as we do it well.
So this motion is for the initial expenditure of 14, is that what that is?
Well, if we're gonna make decisions, it's based on the annual fee of $3,811.40. And a one-time implementation fee of $14,046.
And if I may, I'd like to also thank Councilwoman Rendo. She has generously offered to donate her salary that she receives as councilwoman to pay for the first year's total.
I know that we have to designate a line from where the funds are gonna be taken to pay for this. And so if, you know, Rich and I sat on the police reform committee together, and I thought that it's in par with what we were working on and working towards, and it was one of the goals of that committee to have something like this in place to make sure that our police officers are all up to date. So this is a good opportunity to take that salary and put it to work so that the initial cost doesn't come out of the town budget, but.
Right. So with the generosity of Councilwoman Rendo, the net cost is going to be less than $4,000 for year one. Yes. So moved.
That is correct, Rich. And like I want to reiterate again that I have 16 officers, 4-hour minimum, training them on policies and procedures. The old way of doing it is about $3,000 just to have that 4-hour meeting. And
So
I
moved.
probably need multiple meetings if I was to write those policies the old way.
So moved.
I'll second. And we need a roll call vote.
Yeah, but I just have a discussion.
Yes.
Yeah, so this says valid through June 7th. Is this pricing, have we confirmed that they will honor this pricing?
I believe so. I'm sure they will. I can find out tomorrow.
Okay. So
As proposed.
as proposed, and after verification of the validity of the pricing
As amended.
as amended. Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
you looking for a second? I'll second.
No, actually, Rich
Oh,
Richard.
motioned and Andrea seconded.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Discussion in favor?
Roll call.
We need a roll call, I believe.
Yep.
Aye.
Aye.
Marisha, aye.
Aye.
Is there something specific, some line we have to designate specifically, Mr. Masterson, or?
It's not rocket science.
Okay.
He's got it.
He's got it. He's got it covered. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Okay, next is public comment number 2. Anyone in the audience would like to comment? How about on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay.
Dean Travelino. I'm asking you to unmute.
You got me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks a lot for the opportunity. I had my hand up, traveling 105 Spring Street. Had my hand up during the presentation. I wanted to comment there. This might be a little bit old news. You guys asked some very good questions. I know you have a handle on the issue, but thoughts I had and questions I had. First, by way of disclosure, from where I live, I won't see a cell tower at the Salt Dome. I won't see one at the DPW. Well, actually, from my front porch, would see one from the animal hospital area. But regardless of that, a couple of questions I had. They mentioned that one carrier a long time ago accepted the animal hospital site, and the other one, at some point, rejected it, but he didn't give us the details why. And the question is, why would one take it and one not? Because I think there's a compromise that's involved wherever you site a tower. And it's almost like one company is willing to work with what we have, what's best for the town, and the other company is dictating to us. And I heard that in the Homeland in the presentation, like we're looking for what's optimal for the carrier, optimal for the carrier. This came up 2 years ago when one of the carriers was looking for a little sliver of Route 35 to cover on their maps. So it just makes me a little bit nervous. It's even more compounded for me when the Homeland Tower guy just dismisses our 150-foot buffer, something that used to be sacrosanct in this town. And all of a sudden, oh, you can just wave it away. I don't think, first of all, is that the right thing to be doing in the town of Lewisboro? And second, and you could probably check your counsel would know better than I would, but I think with this recent Supreme Court decision in Carmel, I'm not sure that the town board can just, wave away the 150-foot requirement, because that would in all likelihood knock the planning board out of the process, which is what, if you remember, and Rich was on that board, they complained that Homeland totally cut them out of the process and ignored them when the tower was sited in Cross River. I'm not saying the Cross River Tower wasn't a good idea, it was a great idea, but there was no input on visuals, design, alternatives, and it caused a lot of animosity, which is, you can see it on the meeting, on the video of the meeting. The other one point I want to give also is, Rich asked a very good question about other properties. He only gave a very incomplete answer, which also makes me nervous, because 2 years ago, they said the church was unsuitable and gave their reasons. And my understanding was that the facilities manager of the White Church gave them a big detailed statement about why everything they said was untrue. I don't know if there's any follow-up with that, but even if there were follow-up, that's a misstatement. And I didn't hear anything. Oh, yeah, we looked at a couple of properties and the guy moved on. The other more important question, give me one more second here, or 2 more seconds, is when you look at coverage maps, one question is, who's covered now and who will be covered if they put a tower in one spot or the other? We all agree we need a tower in this area, but I get coverage now. I'm in the low point of the hamlet. I can tether on my computer when the internet goes out. So I have coverage. I probably show weak on a map, but then when they put up coverage, what am I going to get? More coverage? Who knows? Probably not. I already have it. So the coverage map shows you ideals, but it doesn't show you in numbers who will be covered, who's not covered now, which is a question, especially when you look at the other side of the carriers demanding the optimal tower. The Henry Wallace Historic Farm, Vice President of the United States, the Echo Farm, where the town has both a right of first refusal and a development easement over it, the nursery school at St. John's, the cemetery, which people have already had problems with going over there and seeing over there. It's just, there's a balancing act for the benefit of the town that seems to be just run roughshod over by these guys, right down to, oh, don't worry about the 150-foot buffer, just exempt ourselves, which, as I said before, recent Supreme Court's case in Carmel, I think against Homeland, I don't think they could be that cavalier anymore, but thanks for the time.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you, Dean.
Anybody else?
Yes. Carol Cernak, I'm asking you to unmute.
Hi, it's Carol Cernak, South Salem, New York. I'm not as eloquent as Dean is, but I agree with everything he said. I would also like to mention again, the Westwood mulch fire that happened in Katona, which the town is, hopefully, modeling themselves after for the Salt Dome Tower with the mulch piles and the timber piles. A word of caution, don't do it. I've been warning, this for 2.5 years, going on 3 years. Why is there no transparency? Why would home on towers get put on the agenda without notice? There hasn't been the minutes hasn't been posted from the Antenna Advisory Committee since March. So how are we supposed to know what the freak is going on? And the other thing is, Homeland Towers never mentions the historic farm across the way as Farview Farm. We are Farview Farm. We are a historic farm. Vice President Henry Wallace, it's still in the family. We are Farview Farm that sits across from the Salt Dome Tower with the 4.5 acres that was donated by Mrs. Ilo B. Wallace in her husband's name that is now being polluted by the Salt Dome Tower. So the other thing is that the town and Manny, Slick Manny, doesn't take into consideration the wetlands setbacks, the town setbacks or the state setbacks. So let's, take a step back and, figure out what the first steps need to be. What are the setbacks? What are the wetland setbacks, the town, the state? Let's figure this out. Why are we going through this? Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. One more. Alex, if you could state your full name and hamlet, please.
Hi, yes, Alex Gregor, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Hello, thank you. Thank you. I just had a very brief comment. I just wanted to follow up with the discussion on Lexipol. And I am a huge supporter of Chief Alfano and our police force in the town, and I've had extremely favorable dealings with them. I'm just a little concerned, however, with the company itself, and some more research is coming out soon about them. That leaves me just asking a couple of questions that perhaps should be followed up. What is the data sharing policy with Lexipol? And examples in towns, it's a company out of Texas, and examples in other towns have been that there's been increasingly close coordination with ICE as a result of data sharing from small towns. And it's sort of, I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen in our neck of the woods, especially if Chief Alfano is still there, but in other towns, it's a backdoor way into sort of undoing sanctuary city sort of laws and things like this. So I just want to know what that data sharing reciprocal part will be with them. And I'm all for anything that helps alleviate the huge workloads of our police force. But this company is privatizing policy without a lot of public purview of that. So I thought I'd just bring that to light a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. That's it.
That's it. Okay,
I have a question for you, Tony.
sure.
Just talking about all, the presentation tonight. What place has our antenna advisory board had the past few years in dealing with these issues? And what should we discuss what we feel their role should be moving forward, since now things seem to be picking up with the placement of this additional cell tower, and what job, if any, do we want them to do to help us as a board make a decision?
Yeah, and we could certainly provide them, if we have any new requests or something we want them to do. The chair of the committee was here during the presentation.
Well,
So he's fully aware.
on that point, Andrew raises a good point. If maybe we could ask AAB if there's a way for them to further analyze the information we've been provided, for example, on the coverage analysis, if they're able to give us one based upon their expertise, that would be helpful, I know.
Well, they work with, they're working with Cityscape. I mean, they're in contact with Cityscape. They've been in contact with the carriers to discuss like current infrastructure and what can be done to improve existing infrastructure so we get more coverage from what we have today.
Well, I don't mind reaching out to them because I think I'm the liaison, aren't I? So
No,
you are?
I think so.
I'm cable.
Yeah, you're kidding, I think. I'm the A because I do go to their meetings. So, but yeah.
Excellent.
But yeah, we can certainly, the next time they meet, can have 3 of us, but 2 of us can maybe attend. Okay.
If we're,
I'm sorry.
that subject,
I know, yeah, 2. That's what I said. 3 of us can't.
Or we could have one, we could have them come and give a presentation to the board.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I was gonna save it for a comment, but since we're on the subject, you can just as well. First of all, I'm thinking it might behoove us to actually put out a survey to folks in that vision shed and whatever radius to actually physically get something in their hands, do a mailer and maybe the committee could help design the questions for that.
That's why I was asking about a visual test, because, you think about what.
Those
They'll do that. They'll do the balloon
with the
test.
graphics
Yeah.
that are really good. I mean,
And
it's
they'll-
better,
yeah.
the balloon test is not that useful.
Actually, it is because when they put it in Cross River, they did a balloon test.
I
So,
think-
I actually drove around to see.
I'm sorry.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important for our neighbors to see the visual impact of it. And I might be old fashioned, but more than just a photograph, I believe, or a simulation or whatever you call it, is necessary to make sure that everybody's comfortable with how high it's going from wherever it goes.
Is
All of the above then.
on Mary's point, I was
My
just-
question. Oh, go ahead, Rich.
I was just thinking of trying to come up with the word for my, but is there such a thing as a silo-looking tower, at least for the bottom half? I'm just putting it out there. I have no idea if it exists, because maybe something that blends in better down the road. Just, I don't even know such a thing.
Well, we could have,
A silo on the bottom and a tree on the top.
so that'll go on the wish list that we need to provide back to them. So,
Anyway, so
Okay.
Approval of claims?
Yes.
One more comment just on that area. The comment was made about like we would just disregard our wetlands laws. And
We would not.
I don't think anybody here made any comment to that effect. I just pointed out that it was within the 100-foot, 50-foot buffer, and what that means is now the planning board has jurisdiction to consider that, and it doesn't mean that nothing can automatically be done, but there would have to be an examination of the impact, and then some mitigation proposed, and then it either is adequate or not. So all that is TBD based on.
It also triggers the Conservation Advisory Council input as well, in that it affects the environment.
Yeah.
So we're not going to skip
nobody-
any
Yeah,
steps.
just wanted to make that clear that nobody had proposed that. And also the comment was made that one of the actual providers had said okay to the property on Route 35. I think the statement was that one provider had said absolutely not, and the other was still looking at it, but had not given it.
Correct.
So nobody said
That's
it
how I
was
remembered
okay.
it.
Yeah. Just wanna clarify. Okay, done. Thanks.
Okay. Motion to approve claims. Second,
Second,
discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Polling of the board. Andrea.
I recently met and had a Zoom meeting with the Lewisboro Lakes Coalition and Sustainability Partners. And Francis Corcoran gave a very informative presentation. There were a lot of questions, and we're expecting follow-up because obviously we know with the studies that have been done that there's a lot of projects that need to be done within the lakes, and because they are privately owned lakes, the options for how that's going to happen and who's going to pay for it and how much it's going to be is rather limited. So the meeting talked about different solutions where there are established HOAs, a dam project specifically, and then the members that were there went away with food for thought, and they're going to come back with questions. So I'll keep everyone updated as to that. On a side note to that, I made contact with the Department of State with regards to LWRPs and other funding options. And I spoke with a woman last week who took some information that I gave her about our town. And she's going to be getting back to me about that. And hopefully that will eventually get to someone hopefully coming and giving a presentation to also think outside the box with all the work that's going to need to be done in the lakes, et cetera, just to keep an open mind and see what possibilities are out there. Also coming up on the calendar, we're all gonna be at the South Salem Fire Department Parade, I would hope.
I'm
Wednesday
actually,
night.
I have to be out of town.
Oh, okay.
unfortunately.
We'll
I'll
be
be
there.
there. And so that starts Wednesday and I
The
think
parade starts at 7.
the parade starts at 7. I'll be working the ticket booth Wednesday night and Thursday night, helping out over there. Also, the Kids Community Club of Lewisboro is having their second annual Heroes Ice Cream Social on August 28th at the South Salem Fire Department from 1:30 to 3:30. They're looking for volunteers. If you check out them on Facebook, I believe they have a Gmail address. I think it's kidscommunityclub@gmail.com. Oh, and I also spoke with Katie of the Comprehensive Planning Committee, the steering committee. They're working diligently at developing the hamlet maps. And they're looking for inputs. You can contact them with that, and you can check out on the town website. There's a link there, so you can take a look.
Mary.
Do you want to do Rich first?
All right, we'll do Rich first. Go ahead, Rich.
Hope to see as many of you as possible at the South Salem Fire Department Carnival, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturdays. If you're not a first responder, you should be coming out and support our first responders.
If you're not a first responder, you can volunteer and become a first responder because our firefighter houses are all volunteer, as is the Lewisboro Ambulance Corps. The V stands for volunteer, and you'll
Absolutely.
get a lot out of it.
Yep.
And they are looking for people.
They are looking for people, and there are more than just the benefits of giving back to your community as well. So come to the fair and find out more about it. On August 13th, August 20th, and August 27th, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at On a True Farm, Lewisboro Library Fair is having donation days. So bring good, clean books and other attic treasures. I'll be down in the attic treasures, gladly accepting acceptable donations. And we're also looking for volunteers there as well. And you can also check out the website of lewisborogov.com. On the front page, it will give you an update of things that are happening, like guardrail replacement on 123 and various paving projects in town. So drive with caution and consideration.
Thank you, Mary. Well, actually, I want to thank you, Mary, for attending the Eagle Scout Court of Honor.
Yes.
2 Saturdays ago.
South Salem Firehouse. It was an
Right.
honor.
Yeah, and it was our first 2 female Eagle Scouts. So thank you for attending. This weekend.
Are you going last? Don't you usually go last?
Oh, sorry.
I actually don't.
You'll go
have-
last this time, but
I can do that too.
sorry about
I
that.
just didn't want to break tradition.
It's just like when she was talking, I remember
I have actually nothing other than to say we finished the mower swap.
But that's okay, I don't have to necessarily go
No, I
last.
like, I like.
So we finish
One
up.
other thing to mention also is that the Conservation Advisory Council will be updating its website page to include information about the tree ordinance and also aspects of what we can do to take better care of our trees in our community.
And to add to that, they'll be on our agenda for the next meeting to present what they're doing to broadcast the message about
Exactly.
the tree ordinance. And the other thing I wanted to mention again is to thank the Eagle Scouts that were here tonight, and I will be attending their Court of Honor this Saturday.
Okay.
So, Dan?
Oh, yeah, as I said, I don't have much other than to just note that the Sustainability Committee finished the mower swap initiative, and we filled a container with old gas-powered machinery and handed out discount coupons to our local retailers, Copia and Chubby's, for people to go buy electric machinery, and so it turned out to be very popular. So
Is that a total of $5,000 in
Yep.
vouchers?
Yep, so,
Okay.
yep.
Great.
Successful.
Good. All right, so I don't have any announcements except to say the town board meeting, the next town board meeting is August 22nd at 7:30 PM here at the townhouse. And I motion that we go into executive session to discuss for an interview and to discuss personnel issues. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.